Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self-Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with, and it's time to start living, ladies.
Hello, Carrie.
Hello, Ashley.
How are you?
I am doing well.
That's awesome. Me too. So what's on the menu today?
Well, I think since at the time of this recording, we're coming up, well, I guess the holidays have started. We got through Thanksgiving already. And a common theme this time of year, but also any time of year, depending on, if you're a perfectionist or not, this all or nothing thinking.
Oh, I love this one. I come across this all the time with clients, and it's so hard.
Yeah, and it's something I've had to work on as a recovering perfectionist, that it's so easy to get into that mindset where if I can't get it all done right now, I'm not going to do it, right? That's a great example of that all or nothing. I'm going to do it all, or I'm not going to do any of it.
Right.
So there's this misconception sometimes, like it's funny, like for perfectionists, they must have like absolutely spotless homes, but it can actually be the opposite, because if you don't have time to do the entire house cleaning all at once, then none of it gets done.
Right.
So it's an interesting mindset. If you have this mindset yourself, you know what we're talking about, and maybe you don't, but you know people, and this might explain a lot about why about how they think, and you might we're going to shed some light on some of this mindset today.
Yeah, and for a personal thing, like I feel like with a lot of things I live in the gray area as opposed to the all or nothing, which we also might call like black or white thinking. And so I do tend to live in the gray area on some things, but then there are other things where I notice it too, like, wait, I am doing this.
Yeah.
So
And it's important, I think, too, to preface this, like, everything in life is not gray. Like, it is
right.
okay to also have like a, right and wrong in, with certain things and values that are important to you. But it's important to take some of that thinking and ask yourself, are you, it's equates to rigid thinking, so a rigid mindset also, or versus a flexible mindset. So sometimes we get so rigid and we are so stuck in like, no, I'm right, and then that it's that constant living to prove that you are right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no matter what, even if you're
No
like,
matter
wait.
what, at any cost and to any extent. And when you're constantly living to prove that you're right, you don't stop and take the time to consider another person's perspective or point of view, or, is this thought that I have actually right? Because sometimes it could be a limiting belief too, or a fear, fear-based, or, control, which is also fear-based. So there are a lot of, when you boil things back down to those roots, it can be not necessarily a right or wrong issue. It's just that is where you are stuck. You're stuck in that mindset.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's something that I hadn't really thought of, but it's definitely important because there are some, and this is what is so tricky about talking about all the things that we talk about, because there are times when black and white or all or nothing thinking is fine and makes sense. But I think a lot of times it keeps us, like you said, stuck.
Mhm.
And we might feel maybe not comfortable, but it's in our comfort zone, which we talk about a lot too.
Yeah.
Um, and so with all things that we talk about, it just takes practice to do some of this. And I think that we're going to talk about that towards the end. So I
Yeah.
guess go ahead,
Well,
Carrie.
I was going to say, I'm glad that you brought up the comfort zone because for some of us, our comfort zone, the walls of our comfort zone are the rules that we've made.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
so those rules create this wall
Mm.
because that is safe for us. That's why, remember a couple years ago, we asked, because we were just curious, like, what is it about dieting that draws some people to it? And some responses that we got were that it was it was structure and there were rules and they knew exactly what rules they had to follow, right?
Right. Hmm.
And that was just really interesting to me, and I think about that, and that's that comfort zone. So some people are more comfortable with having those rules in place because they know what's expected of them.
Hmm.
They know, right, they don't have to there, and they don't question them, they just kind of follow.
Right.
So and that is safe for a lot of people versus other people like kicking those rules, walls down, and maybe they could use a little more structure.
Right.
So it's all about figuring out that the balance between structure and flexibility that works for you.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that you brought up the rule part because sometimes those are what are keeping us stuck. Like I've seen this going around on social media off and on over the years about somebody that was struggling with anxiety and depression, and they were talking with their therapist, and the therapist was asking, like, "Well, how's your week going?" And they were like, "I don't know." And then the therapist was like, "Well, what's like one thing that's overwhelming to you right now?" And the person was like, "Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but the dishes." And so the therapist was like, "Well, why?" And the person said, because I have a mountain of dishes and they're gross and I have to scrape them off and put them in the dishwasher because my dishwasher doesn't run or clean them very well, but I just cannot stand there and do it. I don't have the energy. And so they had this like rule in their head about I have to do it this way for this outcome. And then the therapist suggested, well, why don't you just run the dishwasher twice or three times or whatever it takes to make them clean so you're saving your energy but you're still getting the task done. And so I think that's a great thing about like opening up our minds, I guess, to doing things in a different way, and maybe it's a different type of rule that we're making for ourselves or just letting go of some of those rules.
Yeah, and also doing it differently. So in that case with the dishes, why not scrape the plates off when you're done eating
Mhm.
and rinse it off and put it directly in the
Right.
dishwasher,
Right, there's so
right?
many different ways to, like, go about that, and I
Right.
think that's great because we definitely tend to, like, box ourselves in or pigeonhole ourselves into, "I always do it this way," or, "This is the way it, quote, unquote, has to be done," because of whatever belief that we have about it, instead of, "How can we make this easier for ourselves because I'm freaking miserable
Mhm.
and I can't think about doing that," or, like, back to the cleaning the house, if I can't do all of it, I'm gonna do none of it.
And remember the saying, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything,
Mhm.
right?
I
So
was waiting for you to bring
the
that up.
person with the dishes, good chance is a perfectionist, and under perfectionism also falls procrastination. So when you procrastinate, so
Me.
instead of taking those dishes, scraping them off after you're done eating, rinse and put it right in the dishwasher, they build up. And then that's where the overwhelm comes, right? So
Right.
overwhelm comes from that all or nothing thinking, and always doing the same thing over and over. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, that's when it's a good time to stop and take a step back and look at what is going on, look at your habits, because your habits are huge clues as to the way your thoughts and your beliefs and the way you think. And how can you change and do it differently, right? And
Mhm.
so, um, the housework, what are some ways like daily that you could do little things? These are just examples, by the way.
Right.
But what are let's say the housework is something, and or now with the holidays you're gonna have company over, right? Families coming over. Oh my gosh, I've got to clean the whole house. But what are some ways on a daily basis that you can do to stay on top of it, so that
Mhm.
then you're not spending the entire weekend cleaning your house, right? Getting the laundry to the washer, getting it done, folding the clothes as they're coming out of the dryer. Like
Yeah.
there's just like little things that like, "Ugh, I don't feel like doing that right now." But once you do it and get into that habit of doing them little by
Mm,
little, it gets much easier, and it's like that overwhelm dissipates because now you're not looking at piles and piles of laundry, and you can't even use your kitchen sink because it's full of dishes. You know what I'm saying? Like it just
yeah.
it adds up and it piles up on top of each other
Mhm.
with that all or nothing mindset.
Yeah. And I think another good piece of it too is like for myself, I tend to go in phases. Like some weeks I'm really great about staying on top of it, like you were just saying. And it makes me feel so much better because it's not a mountain of things to look at. It's a reminder, right? Like, oh, you need to do this at some point, and it just keeps getting bigger, and that's when the overwhelm sets in. And some weeks I'm great about doing it as it's happening, and other weeks, like last week, we were all really sick, so
Mhm.
stuff's piled up. So I'm feeling the overwhelm.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and obviously you need to give yourself a break, right? And,
Right,
and
for sure.
show some self-compassion on weeks that um some weeks are just nuttier than others,
Exactly.
or you're sick or whatever, and it's just giving yourself a break. And I think as moms also, it is okay to ask your kids and your partners, your spouse, to help out.
Mhm.
Like sometimes why do we take that all on ourselves,
Yeah.
right? We moms are notorious for the all or nothing, because it's like, and there are again underlying reasons. Some of it's control, right? Didn't If it's going to get done, I've got to do it, otherwise it's not going to get done. Or if it's going to get done right, I've got to do it myself.
Mhm. I'm guilty of that last one for sure.
So it's there are a lot of those underlying beliefs that are running your show. And then you brought up a good point, as like when you said like the piles of laundry and the piles of dishes and stuff is like this reminder. It's not only just a reminder of feeling overwhelmed, it's also depending on limiting beliefs. I suck.
Mm,
Why can't I do good? Why can't, why can't I get organized? What is wrong with me? Right? Like
mhm.
then all that negativity just also piles up on
Right.
top with the laundry and the dishes. So, this all or nothing mindset, if you're listening to this right now, are you recognizing any of this in you? I know it's a lot easier sometimes to point it out in other people, right? But take a step back and be honest. And do you recognize any of this in you? Because a lot of us have at least some of this, right? Some of it to different varying degrees. Um, so which is why we're talking about it. And during the holidays, it really highlights also,
Right.
because we don't want your holidays to be just a stressed out,
Mm.
two months,
Yeah.
2 months of nothing but stress. It doesn't have to be like that.
No, we want you to enjoy them. And that's the whole
Mhm.
point, right? Like the most magical time of year. And I feel like a lot of people say that in such a sarcastic way now because there's so much stress. There's so much to do. There's so much money to spend. And especially right now, stuff is so expensive. Like, just
Mhm.
basic stuff is so expensive. And I feel like everyone's feeling that, especially this year. Um,
Mhm.
so it's just making it even more stressful. And so we want you to enjoy your holidays. Like if normally you spend X amount of money on holidays and it gets everybody a few gifts or whatever, but this year the same amount of money is going to buy like two or three things instead of enough for everyone. Like, how can we still have a magical time of holiday season with doing a little bit less, but still like being present and making memories. It doesn't have to cost money. Um, so we're taking that all, this is what I normally do. This is how it quote unquote has to be. How can we turn it into more of, like I said earlier, like that gray zone?
Yeah. So, well, I'll give a real life example of
Ooh.
Thanksgiving this year. I
Mhm.
hosted, which is how it usually goes. But usually in the past, I put it all on myself. Like, people will ask, what can I bring? Oh, no, 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 no. You don't need to
I
bring.
got this.
I got this. Right. This year, I'm like, you know what? You can bring this and you can bring this and could you please bring this, right? And it
Mm,
was so, I can't even tell you, so much less stressful. Like
yeah.
bada bing bada boom, we ate at
Mhm.
noon, and everyone, because as your kids get older and they get significant others and they've got other meals to go to and stuff,
Mhm.
so it gave them the opportunity to do that, but I wasn't a stressed out mess.
Right, and it wasn't like you had to get up at 4 a.m. and, like, do all this
Well,
stuff.
I still did that.
Okay, well,
I had to get the
the
turkey on
turkey
the
has to
Traeger.
go in, but you
Yes,
could go back to sleep.
turkey does. But I got up earlier than I needed to. But as we talked about before, I'm dealing with a little bit of insomnia, so I was already awake anyway. So, um, but I wasn't like, and I did the rule. So there are some dishes like are non-negotiable, right? So homemade
Okay.
rolls is one of
Yep.
them for me. So, but I did them the day before
Oh, yep,
and I just reheated them.
yep,
Like like one day is not going to make a difference, and I'm
right.
not going to
We
turn
did a lot of that too, like, prep a couple things, like, a day or 2 before,
yeah,
um, we split the responsibilities of who's cooking what. Yeah, I felt the same way, like, it was so much less stress. Um, I really like, how can we make this easier for ourselves and everyone else?
yeah. And
Because
I
who
will
wants to.
say I will say too, my fiance did all the cleanup, like
Oh,
all
that's
of it.
even
He wouldn't even
better.
let me in the kitchen. I'm like, so that did help.
Right, and who wants to deal with us when we're that stressed out anyways?
Exactly. Exactly. So
So, what are some other, like, ways that it could apply to the holidays, I guess? Like, um
I know one thing, like some people love to decorate for the holidays, right? And I do too, but some people, if it stresses you out and you feel like, oh, you're in competition with your neighbors, or, like taking that right away, what amount of decorating is going to make you happy and feel like, you got the holiday joy and, happiness and coming, how much decorating is it going to take for you to do that? Because if it's just going to stress you out, to look like a Martha Stewart Christmas card, then don't do it.
right.
Right? And Christmas cards, speaking of which, is one area like every year for 30 years I have said, I'm going to do Christmas cards this year. Guess what? I haven't done them because it was too stressful, like for me
Right.
to, I'm like, people know, especially now, like they see, I don't know,
Right,
everyone
they
with
follow us
social
on social
media.
media, yes,
Yeah, they know what's going on.
exactly, and,
But
I'm the opposite. I used to do Christmas cards, and now I don't anymore because you have to plan way ahead for them, for one, and
mhm,
if you do ones like your personal photo ones as the
mhm,
card itself, you really have to plan way ahead to get them in time to then mail them back out.
right.
Plus, they're super expensive. I was looking at some because I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll do some." Like, at least I took it a step further, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll do it," and I, like, picked one and just plugged in how many I thought I might need and got the price, and it was even on sale, and I was like, no."
Now I love receiving cards.
Right, same. But maybe 1 year, and you know what? That's fine. And honestly, for this year too, I feel like every year as it comes, as my daughter gets older and I have more wisdom, maybe, I feel like I'm getting things done earlier in the
Mhm.
season and, like, stressing out about it less. And
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's that, like, growth mindset or just not caring as much or all of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's well, definitely growth mindset, right?
Right.
So if when you start beating yourself up, stop for a second and take a look back. Be like, okay, like even 5 years ago, how was I, was I stressing out even more, or what?
Mhm.
To give yourself some credit for how much you've grown and how far you've come and the changes that you've made. And it doesn't mean like somewhere down the road, maybe you'll be like, oh, I'm going to do Christmas cards again, right? Like there's no right or wrong with that tradition. Like one tradition that we do is we make my grandmother's Christmas cookie recipe. And the boys come over, my grown boys, and now it'll be my granddaughter too. And their wives and stuff, and decorate the Christmas cookies.
Mhm.
And that is a tradition that I want to keep
Right.
and pass down. But I have certain decorations that we put up. Some years, like when I was in the middle of my divorce, I didn't even get a tree.
Right. Like it totally depends on your season of life and where you're at because like I said, right now I'm planning earlier. I've gotten a lot of my shopping done already. Because I was thinking about it earlier because I had the room to, I guess. And before, like it didn't happen until a few weeks before, the holiday. And then it's like so stressful because is it going to get here in time? I still have to wrap everything and saving wrapping till like the
Mhm.
day before or whatever. And it's so miserable. And instead, now that my daughter's older and we can do more fun holiday stuff, is like I want to spend the time decorating with her. I want to spend the time wrapping gifts together for other people. Or last year we started this fun thing where we didn't use like regular wrapping paper for most of our gifts. We saved a lot of like, the paper packing material
Yeah.
that you get that's like
Yep,
really
that's a
long
great
sheets of
idea.
brown
Yeah,
paper. We wrapped with that and then we painted on it. Like it was
nice.
so much fun and we had the time to be able
Mhm.
to do that. And so it's like,
Mhm.
how can you save yourself the time to be able to do the things that are more fun?
Right. And if you feel like you don't have the time, then what is taking up your time?
Exactly. And how can you rearrange that? Or, like you said earlier, like that flexible thinking, like if I still have to do shopping and wrapping, how can I make that easier? Can I do more of it online? Can I, get it gift wrapped if I have the extra money to do that? Or does it need to be wrapped? Can I put them in gift bags? Like
Right.
so many ways to think about that.
Yeah, and some of this boils down to what is important to you.
Right. And keep that
Mm.
stuff and change the rest.
Right. Not necessarily I mean, let me see. Not necessarily like totally X out, like I don't care what's important to you. I'm just going to do what's important to me. That's not what I'm saying here.
Right.
Like, but at some point you have to decide what traditions you want to keep and what is going to create the least amount of overwhelm. Like with my divorce, I had to let go of having to have everyone there on the holiday. Does that
Right.
make sense? Like,
Yeah.
because it just would create fights and stress, and I didn't want it. So I don't, and even to this day, I don't care. And I tell my boys that I don't care as long as we all at least make an attempt
Right.
to get together around that
Mhm.
time.
Definitely.
But for some people, like if you're stuck, like, no, it has to be this day, um, it's going to create a lot of stress and chaos for
Yeah, yeah.
you
Especially
unnecessarily.
especially as your family grows, like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, we have to take in consideration, like, so many people's schedules and
Yes.
so many people's schedules, and
Yeah.
it's so frustrating. So it's like, okay, well, how can we pull it off? It doesn't matter when it is, like, let's just figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and another thing too is with, like, food. I think we talked a little bit about this in one of our last episodes, but the all or nothing around eating in general and holiday food because there's just like so much of it. So I wanted to talk about it really quickly. Like, and if you want to listen more, the whole episode, I think it was episode 22.
We're so good remembering the
I
episode
think,
numbers.
let me look. No, I lied. This time I was wrong. It was 21.
21.
No. I don't know, 21 or 22.
Because
I don't have them
we don't
all
have
numbers.
22 listed.
No, I don't.
21 or 22.
Something
Holiday
like that.
food frenzy.
Yes. But yeah, so thinking about how much food there's going to be, and like we were saying, it's like this all or nothing thing. I want to eat all of it. Okay, well, how's that going to turn out? How has it turned out for you in the past? Or on the flip, I'm not going to eat any of it and go into it with like that restrictive mindset. And how does that turn out for you?
Right.
Um, I feel like a lot of times the all or nothing thinking has like that pendulum effect because we start, and we mentioned this earlier, like we start with the all, like we have to do it this way. But if we don't, then we automatically flip into that nothing
Hmm.
side and finding like that gray area, like especially with food. Okay, these are the parties or commitments I have. And if I normally go to them, I sort of might have an idea of what the foodscape is going to look like. What have I enjoyed in the past? What do I really want to enjoy? How can I be okay with doing that?
Right.
How can I
And
let
I'm
myself enjoy that?
right. I'm glad you mentioned parties because that's another thing too.
Mm,
How many parties do you get invited to? Do you have to go to all of them?
right.
And how often do we feel like we have to justify why if we don't want to or we're not going to, we have
I
to
know
come
we
up with
feel
some.
so bad if we don't go, especially if it's when we go to usually. Like,
Mhm,
what if it's on the same day as something else? A day you had planned to go get your Christmas tree or do something else. Like,
mhm.
what's gonna make you happier?
Right.
Stressing out about going to a party, and if it's a potluck or whatever, you have to bring something or Yankee swap or stressed out
I
just thinking
I
about it. And I don't
I
really go
know,
to
just
parties. Oh gosh.
let's just skip right to January 2nd.
I don't know.
No, but that's the whole point, like, that's not
Right.
how we should be able to enjoy, and it's hard during the holidays because, if you work, you've still got work, and you've got all this extra stuff, so this is where it comes down, so one of my suggestions, one of my top ones would be, what is important to you? Is spending time with family important to you?
Mhm.
Is, you know, all
Buying
the
perfect
holiday
yeah, buying perfect gifts for everybody, like,
that
that's a really
important.
big deal to some people.
Right, right. Especially if your love language is gifts,
Mhm,
is buying gifts, giving gifts.
mhm,
If that is important to you, but the budget's not allowing it this year, how can you still give people meaningful gifts, that still satisfies you and is meaningful to you and to them, right? Like,
mhm,
so it's stopping. You don't have to break yourself. You don't have to go into debt during this time of year because you're in this all or nothing mindset that it has to be all of it and perfect and that's just it. And like Ashley mentioned, that pendulum, when you're at one end of the pendulum and you're like, okay, I'm going to practice getting out of this mindset, right? Sometimes, usually, we swing all the way over to the other end of the
right.
pendulum. When we kind of miss, we kind of whoop, there's that gray area.
Yeah.
We go right by it and we go to the other end. So just know that, but also notice when you're doing that.
Mhm, and sometimes it's just easier to it's probably gonna happen, like, as you
Mhm,
start practicing these things, going from all to the gray, we do tend to bypass it, like you said, like, it
mhm,
just happens because, well, if I'm not gonna do it this way, well, then we turn to the opposite, right?
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
not about doing the opposite, it's about, uh, finding that flexibility. I think that's kind of the key point of everything we're talking about today is, like, opening up the possibilities, and just because I do something this way, what is a similar way that probably gives us the same end result, but allows us to have that flexibility and not stressing ourselves out, not taking up all of our time, not spending all of our money, not taking up all of our energy.
And how do you want it to feel? Like,
Mhm.
how do you want your days to feel? Do you want them to feel overwhelmed? I would think most people would say, "No, I don't." Um, So how do you want to feel instead? Well, what do you have to do to get that feeling instead of this feeling of overwhelm?
Mhm. Yes,
And it can't stop there. Then you have to do it.
right, right. And
And
I
that's
think
where so many of us
yeah,
fall short. It's like, yeah, here's how I want to feel. Here's what I need to do. And then we go back into that overwhelm again,
right.
right?
Exactly.
And we
And
don't
that's where I think I've gotten better about, like, doing my shopping earlier, like,
have.
because I used to save it or not even save it, like, just didn't do it. I don't know. I don't remember, like, was I just busy? I don't know. Maybe I just didn't plan. Like,
Mhm.
this year I started thinking about some Christmas gifts for people, like, way ahead.
Yep.
I think I bought my first one, like, months ago because I was like, "Oh, it's on sale. This will be a great one for somebody." And so planning helped a lot. Sometimes I
Mhm.
even make lists, like, "This is what I wanna get for everybody." Sometimes, like, this year, I don't have that, but I definitely started shopping earlier because I didn't want everything to be squished in to the last week or 2 and be stressed and be wrapping and just, "Did I get this for this person? Did I get this for this person?" Like, it's too much. So,
Right.
that's why I said, like, I'm gonna shop earlier and get most of the shopping done, and then I can enjoy the rest of the stuff
Of
because
the stuff.
right. All this stuff, like having hot chocolate and watching Christmas movies and decorating, putting lights up, and, my daughter and I like to read under the Christmas tree lights, like, I don't know, making cookies is definitely another one that we like, playing outside and
So
going
for
sled
you, Ashley, what feelings go along with all those
like,
things?
spending the time with the people doing the fun stuff.
But what
Like
how does that feel to you? Like, what
right,
kind of emotions does that bring up to you?
like, the love and happiness and, like, the joy, the magic of the
Mhm.
Christmas time, I guess.
Yeah. And so if you
Oh,
weren't
Carrie's coaching me right now, everybody.
sorry.
It's okay. I'll be in the
I'm
hot
just
seat.
using it as an example
Oh, it's a great one.
because so that's how you want to feel, and you know what activities will contribute to those feelings, right?
Right.
To bringing those feelings up versus and you've been at this doing this long enough so that now you've learned, oh, if I do my shopping earlier, then that allows more time for the things that are more meaningful. Well, not
Exactly.
more meaningful to me, but don't it doesn't create the shopping doesn't create this last minute chaotic
Right.
overwhelming stress for you.
Mhm.
So you have the time now for these other things that really help create that feeling that you want to create.
Right. Exactly. You nailed it.
Nailed it.
So,
um
what
yeah,
are some
so
yeah, what are some other ways that people can do this? Like, how if we're so used to it, this all or nothing, how do we do it? Like you mentioned, figuring out what's important as
mm,
a step
yep.
and kind of
and and
planning
and
from
how
there.
you want to feel.
Right.
So
And
what
then
you have to
planning.
do
Yep.
and
And
planning
doing it.
ahead and doing it.
You gotta
Um
do it.
but also like you said, you got to plan it out, right? So like we both have planners and I don't know what I would do without mine. And I love, so people don't like this. I love making a list of things I have to do and checking them off.
Yes. I've
And
recently switched my my not attempt, my, execution of that though, to be honest, and
yeah,
I used to have, like, scraps of paper, like old envelopes or stuff that was going in the
yep.
recycling bin, and I would just, like, make this really long list and scratch it off, but, then it just sat on my counter, and I had to look at it, and, I didn't like it. Like, that
Overwhelm.
overwhelm, right? So I
Hmm.
switched, and I put it all on my phone, like, in the notes app on my
Yep.
iPhone,
Yep. I
and
have
so
mine
I
in my
only
planner.
yeah, I only have to look at it when I go look at it, though. It's also not in my planner sitting there reminding me, like,
Yeah.
when I'm like, "Oh, I need to do something. What was that?" I can go look at it, and I don't have it, like, on my home screen or anything. I have to go look for it to do it. So it's not like that constant
Hmm.
reminder. And yes, I like to check stuff off, but after a while, because I leave them so long, it just looks awful. It looks chaotic. Stuff gets lost. Like, So
Mm,
I've recently switched to doing that way, and I don't know if it'll stick for the long term, but it's worked so far.
good. Because that wouldn't work for me.
Right.
Because I would just, if it's put away, I forget. Like
Right.
out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
So for some people that, and this is great because it shows you Ashley and I are not just alike. So what works for her, I know what that would not work for me. I put my list right in my planner. It's a part of my day. And what I need to do that day. Um, and then I can check it off for that day or week or whatever.
Mhm.
And I will say I've also been at this long enough where the whole housekeeping thing, I keep up with the dishes, they don't sit. I cannot stand, it stresses me out when I wake up the next morning and walked out down to the kitchen and it's dishes from the previous day or night or whatever are all over that.
I
It
have no
stresses me
problem with
out.
that.
So I have gotten into the habit of, even though once you get into the habit, you just do it, right? Like there's no like, I don't feel like doing this. I just do it after we eat, and everyone's also old enough to help now. And so they can clean their own dishes off and at least put them in the sink. They at least make it to the sink, then I just rinse and stick them in the dishwasher. But sometimes I do the dishwasher too. When my kids were little, this was actually part of my stress management.
I love it.
Because what would happen, right? Little kids, Cheerios, crackers, right? All,
Oh
and
my
then
gosh.
crumbs all over the place, right? So part of my stress management when my kids were little is I took 10 minutes in the evening after the toys were picked up, they were all bathed and they were sitting, with maybe a evening snack or whatever. But I would take 10 minutes and run the vacuum through the main living area of the house because then I wasn't stressed out all day long. Like, I just vacuumed, right?
Right.
Get that, those crackers, you're making a mess, whatever. Like, there just wasn't that. I was like, whatever, I'm going to vacuum later, and
Right.
it was just 10 minutes, a quick zoop, zoop, zoop
Right.
to get it done with. So there's just like different ways, get creative, like what is going to help you, what is going to work for you. Those disinfectant wipes, super handy for just quickly wiping the bathroom down every day, like literally takes 30 seconds,
Right.
right? Like we're not talking deep cleaning here, like just to keep things touched up, things put away. Sometimes the laundry still does add up, like out of the dryer.
Oh yeah.
But try to, as it comes out, if I just quickly fold things as they come out, that has been very helpful too.
Mhm.
Because how stressful is it, like combing through what you're trying to find through
Oh
even a
yeah.
clean load of clothes, right?
Mhm.
So think about what is stressing you out and what are some solutions to it. And if you say, I don't have time to do all that, well, you clearly don't have time to end up taking care of huge loads of laundry and dishes, right?
Right, or how
So,
many minutes does add to your day sorting or
right,
looking through that clean lawn? Like,
exactly.
I'm doing it right now, and it's frustrating, and
Yep,
every day I'm like, "I need to put all this stuff away," and I have not done it yet, but
yep.
it's takes time to sort through all that clean stuff to find what you're looking for, whereas if we put it away,
Hmm.
like, it's probably where it's quote unquote "supposed to be" in your closet or whatever, and it just makes it so much easier, or at least, like, fold it and leave it in a pile on top of the dryer, at least you could see
Hmm.
what's there, like, I
Right,
don't know. And
right.
honestly, right now, I'm leaving most of our socks on top of the dryer, and people can just take what they want.
But not even
But
just the time, but also the frustration, like,
yes,
getting
add that
and
negativity to your day.
negativity, and not just from yourself, but also from, your partner or your
Mhm.
kids, like, I can't find it, right?
Right.
Like, and putting things away where they're supposed to be.
Mhm.
That's an issue sometimes in our house. It's like,
Mhm.
just put it where it's supposed to be and you'll always know where it is.
Right.
Right? So, um, yeah, it's like little things, like what is irritating you, what is stressing you out, what is making you feel overwhelmed. Notice what that is first, name it, and then decide what you can do to create more structure. Now, if you're the opposite end and you've got so much structure that there's no compromise on it, then you need to also take a look at that. Like, okay, what am I so rigid on and like uncompromising on? And if it really is a value that is like, no, this, I'm not compromising on that, then, that is okay too. This is up for you to decide where you can become more flexible and maybe where you need more structure, right?
And like you said, like asking for help too, because, or looking for it, like if the laundry, going back to the laundry example, is something that's stressing you out, look at what other people are doing. Like on social media, there's so many like life hacks and whatever out there. Because I feel like if I was really stuck in an area, I wouldn't even know how to change it, I guess. So like look for some outside ideas and you can probably tell whether that would work for you or not, or just try it and see how it goes. Like we always talk about experimenting.
Yeah, because it's about practicing that, and but it's consistent practice. So, you can't try one tactic once and be like, this doesn't work for me, right? And it might not feel good at first because it's out of your comfort zone. Because if something's not part of your normal routine, it's not something you are familiar with, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first.
For sure.
So just tossing it aside and say, oh, this doesn't work, but you never really gave it a fair shot, isn't the way to do it either. But that consistent practice is the way to do it. And you're probably sick of us hearing us say that, but we're gonna keep saying it.
And it's so true because again, like I was very off and on about like menu planning for our meals before, but
You're very good about it now.
exactly, the past month, and part of it I think was I started posting our menu plan for the week in our Facebook group to kind of help other people with ideas or get ideas for like the next week by posting it, saying like,
You gave me an idea today.
like, good, what are you guys having? Like, and part of that, the habit, right? The doing it every week, getting into the routine, like this is when I do it on this day, and this is when I do the grocery shopping, or within a few days, right? Like this week I did it a little bit earlier. But usually I do it on Mondays. But this week I did it earlier because the holiday I had extra time or whatever. But I've really been a lot better and it's been making the weeks so much easier. And like I feel better about, oh well, we have a meal. Not like, when you don't have a meal plan, it's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And then most of us aren't happy with what we're feeding our families at that point either.
Right. Right. Yeah. And did you notice you just said that feels so much better, right?
Exactly.
So it's creating that feeling. How do you want to feel in your day to day? And not that you're always going to feel like that
No.
either, right?
Some weeks I'm not gonna do it. I know it.
Right. But when you find yourself going back to old habits or patterns, stop and notice that it's okay. But then it's like, okay, this is why I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out again, because I fell back into that. Because remember, in your brain, you're creating, when you're forming new habits, you're creating new nerve pathways, but those old ones are still there. Like, hey, still here when you need me.
Exactly.
So, and it's eager to jump in there because again, those are more well-worn pathways. So eventually though, if you keep up with the new one, the old one will get pruned a little bit and won't be as strong.
Exactly.
So your habits aren't just what you're doing, it's what you're thinking also. So it's, again, consistent practice.
Yes. And I think that's what's so hard for everyone, like the starting the thing and then maintaining it for as long as you need to make it part of your whatever schedule, routine, whatever. That's the hardest part. It really is. And so I think when Carrie says like, why is it important and how do you want it to feel? Really keep that in mind when you're doing this, because at first doing the menu planning was like, whatever. I was just doing it because I don't know. I wanted to, obviously.
Because
But
you were preaching to us about doing it.
Exactly. But now I can see the benefits of it. Like the first few weeks, whatever, I don't know. It was what it was. I was trying this out, right? Like when we're trying something new, we're like quote unquote on track. And then we typically fall off. But this time I kept with it because I was like, oh, this is making our weeks so much easier. Like I know I have the ingredients for this meal. I have a general idea of which days we're doing what only because some days we don't get home until really late. So I really try to pick some really easy, quick ones or ones that can be like prepared and ready for us when we get home.
Yep.
Um, and then we're not getting home at 7 p.m. and being like, what are we eating? Like
Right.
that doesn't feel good and I hate it. And so I you guys have heard me say this before. My least favorite question is what's for dinner? I hate it. And so guess what? Nobody asks that anymore.
But you brought up a good point too, Ashley, that when you first started it, it didn't feel good, right?
Right,
It
right.
wasn't the feeling that you were actually going for initially. That's
Exactly,
why we
exactly.
say you've got to keep with it. Don't just try it, I tried meal planning for a week and
Mhm,
I hated it. Like
right,
give it an honest shot, right?
exactly.
Like if a baby gave up the first time they were trying to walk, the first time they fell, none of us we still all be crawling.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right? But you got to stick with it long enough to give it an honest shot to see if it's working for you.
for sure. And now it's kind of fun, like and sometimes if I think of a meal, I'll be like, "Oh, I wanna have that next week," and I'll, like, put again, I'm using my notes app to make the
Yep.
menus, like, I look at it when I need to or want to, and I don't have to look at it any other time. So if I think of an idea, I'm like, "Oh, let's put that on the menu, idea for next week," and, "Oh, what do I need for groceries? Oh, I'll add that." I do a lot of online ordering, for grocery
That's
pickup.
another time saver too, right?
It is, I love it. Oh my gosh. We typically do it, like, when we're going into town anyways, instead of having to make a separate trip, and so you can plan it around there, but I add the stuff to my shopping cart right then and there as I'm figuring out what I need, or if I run out of something, I
Mhm.
just start adding it into there, um, then so I don't forget about it.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
That's a great idea that you brought up about the online shopping. I haven't done it yet.
Mhm.
But it's good to know. So you really like it.
I
Uh,
do. And there's some quirks to it, obviously, like,
yep.
if you need something super specific and they don't have it or it doesn't get into your order for whatever reason, like, that causes some things.
Mhm. Okay,
Um,
you get home and realize you don't have it, or
right,
do you
and
find out ahead of time?
you can find out ahead of time, more or less. Or, like, if they substitute items for you, they usually run it by you, like, you have to approve or deny it.
Okay.
You can make suggestions for substitutes, like, "If you don't have this, then I'll take this." Um, but for the most part, it's very handy, and it saves me so much time for shopping in general,
Mhm.
but also, like I said, I only go do it, like, while we're gonna be in town anyways,
Right.
um, instead of making those extra trips.
Mhm.
Although, if they don't have something, then sometimes you do make the extra trip, but that's
Because
how it is.
Ashley and I kinda live the booties.
Very true,
So
very true.
so, going into town, it's not that far, but, it's not like just running down the
Exactly.
street.
Exactly. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's super handy to me. Um, one of the first few times my daughter was like, "Well, isn't this lazy?" And I was like, "I know
No,
that
it's
it's not
smart.
getting right? Like we're not walking around the store.
Mhm.
True, we're not getting activity in that way. And we're saving ourselves time so we can go home and hang out together
Mhm.
instead of being in the grocery store, which I hate. I used
Yeah.
to really kinda like grocery shopping, because of my job, right? Like, everyone asks about new products and, "Have you seen this?" But most of the time, it's me standing in the grocery store looking at stuff and being like, "Why did they do this? What are these new products? Oh my gosh, they're ridiculous."
Mm.
Um, and fighting other people in the store, and, again, we live kind of in a smaller area, so there's a lot of labor shortages, so sometimes you're standing in checkout forever.
Oh, or checking yourself out.
Yeah, and it's not for me anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame that. I think that might be something I need to start trying.
And also, I know that we kind of are off a little off topic at this point, but I feel like it saves us money because you're not walking by everything anymore. And
Right.
the cool thing about the store app that I use, and probably most of them are like this, it's like when you search for something to add to your cart, it brings up the very, very first one is like the one that you usually buy or have bought before. And you can probably make like I haven't explored it too much, but you can probably make like a list of your favorites or whatever. And this is kind of like the candy at the checkout aisle, but at the end when you're like going to submit your order or whatever, it's like, did you forget these items? And it's like all these items that you typically buy. And it's like, oh yeah, I did. Thank you. Or actually, no, I don't need that.
Mhm.
But I feel like I've saved money by not like impulse shopping.
Well, it sounds like you've saved frustration too,
All of it. Yep.
and time. So
Yes.
frustration, time, and money.
Hmm.
So and again, but that can I can see where that falls into the all or nothing, right? It's like again, nope, I got to do it myself,
Right.
or it's not going to get done right. I don't
Mhm.
trust anyone else to do it. That's another
Yeah.
big issue with the all
And
or nothing.
that's definitely a thought sometimes, like, oh, if they don't have this, that's gonna be like throw a whole wrench in my plans. But whatever, I will figure it out.
Right.
Like
That's a great thing.
flexible,
I mean, cooking is so you can throw whatever you want into it,
right?
right?
Or like if that meal's not gonna the worst one I think was I was the worst experience I had. Well, one of them. Sometimes they take a long time to bring stuff out because again, labor shortages. But
Right.
anyways, um, one time I was planning on having something specific from that order for dinner that night that didn't require a lot of cooking, and they didn't have it. So then
Mm.
that was a little bit stressful, but I mean, you just do what you do. So
But that would have happened whether you had gone to the store yourself or not,
exactly,
right? So
exactly. Anyways, that's a whole nother story for a whole different day, but
I'll have to do a whole episode on online grocery shopping.
grocery shopping. Yeah.
Uh, well, this was great.
Yes.
Anything else? Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. I think and I know that some of the, like, solutions that we talked about aren't super tangible or have that structure, like, this is exactly how you do it, which is what a lot of people are looking for, and we totally understand that, but
Mhm.
that's what has kind of kept us boxed in to begin with, and I think letting yourself be in that driver's seat, which we talk about a lot, um, to make your own choices and your own decisions and your own, like, routines or habits or whatever, instead of relying on like these old rules like we talked about at the beginning. I think it's much more powerful and it's all about you that way.
But you can also make it more tangible by writing it down.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
you
So
grab a notebook and it's what is overwhelming me? Um, how do I want to feel instead? What do I have to do to feel like that?
right.
And it's also being honest with yourself. Like if you have a super rigid mindset, and you struggle with control, which it's hard to admit that, but I've been there too. If you are a perfectionist, I've had some people think that they're not perfectionists, and other people were telling them that yes, you are. And so I pointed out because sometimes perfectionism isn't, like I said, like what do you mean I'm a perfectionist? My life is a mess. My house is a mess, right? I'm so disorganized because that all or nothing,
Right.
right? And procrastination and the black and white thinking, the very rigid thinking. You're not you're kind of a control freak, right? That falls under this. Like if you have that in your thinking, it's like um, I have to do it all myself, or it's not going to get done, or it's not going to get done right, but you're complaining that you have to do it all yourself.
Hmm.
Right. These are all clues that you
Yeah.
have this all or nothing thinking. And how is that affecting your life? It's being honest with yourself. How is it affecting you, but how is it affecting other people around you in your life too? Because we forget that our behavior it has a ripple effect and it does affect other people. And there are different kinds of perfectionism, and one of them is the perfectionism that we actually put on other people, expecting
Mm,
them to be perfect and to do it our way, right?
yeah.
Like, and then if you turn it around, it's like, well, if someone said to you, no, this is the way you have to do this, and this is how you have to act. We'll be like, what?
Right. Like you saying it out loud sounds ridiculous, but we all do.
Right. But it's how we think sometimes.
Right.
And we put that on other people. But then when the tables turn and we, if it was done to, it's like, what do you mean? No, that's not how I do it. I'm going to do it this way. Right.
Right.
But this is what you put on other people. Anyway, we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
But that all or nothing thinking is, it can be detrimental to relationships and to just being successful in life.
Mm-hmm.
So notice when you're doing it, how would it make your life better if you had a little bit more flexibility in your thinking?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's all I have to say about that.
that sounds great.
Just kidding. I always have more to say.
Always, but we'll wrap it up.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you want to let us know what you think or give us examples or suggestions for others for how you do something that might be different, that might be helpful for other people, we'd love to hear them.
Yes.
You can share with us on social media. You can find us in our Facebook group. The links are all in the show notes. Yeah. And if you're listening to this around the holidays, happy holiday season to you. And if not, happy day to you.
Happy every day.
That's right. And we'll chat with you next time.
See you next time. Love you, latte.
Love you, latte.